Before we proceed with the video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button on the video. Thank you. Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin was born on December 18, 1878, in the city of Gori, Georgia. Born as Ioseb Vissarionis Dzhugashvili, Stalin is known as the leader of the Soviet Union. Here are some important details about Stalin's life. Youth and education. Stalin was born to a peasant family facing economic hardships. In his youth, he considered becoming a priest and joined the Georgian Orthodox Church, but later turned to Marxist ideology. He joined the Georgian Social Democratic Organization in Georgia and played an active role in the Bolshevik faction in Tiflis, revolutionary activities and rise to power. He was among the leaders of the Bolshevik Party during the October Revolution of 1917 and supported Bolshevik rule in Russia. After Lenin's death, a power struggle for leadership of the Soviet Union ensued, and Stalin rose to a powerful position in this struggle. The Stalin Era. By the late 1920s, Stalin became the absolute leader of the Soviet Union. His policies and practices led to the construction of an authoritarian regime. He initiated the five-year plans, accelerating collectivization and industrialization in the USSR. His policies of land collectivization and industrialization resulted in great suffering for millions of people, leading to widespread famine and repression. This period saw significant human losses under Stalin's rule. World War II and later years. Stalin played a significant role as the leader of the Soviet Union during World War II. After the war, he sought to expand Soviet influence in Eastern Europe, contributing to the onset of the Cold War era. Stalin died at the age of 74 in 1953. The cause of his death, according to some sources, was a stroke. The Stalin era is marked by numerous controversial events and policies in Soviet history. His authoritarian rule and oppressive policies impacted the lives and freedoms of many, making him one of the most contentious leaders of the 20th century. Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin was born on December 18, 1878, in the city of Gori, which is now within the borders of Georgia, part of the Russian Empire at that time. His real name was Ioseb Vissarionis Dzhugashvili. He grew up in difficult economic conditions in a small town in Georgia as part of a low-income peasant family. Stalin's education was quite complex. He attended the religious school of the Georgian Orthodox Church in Georgia during his youth, but later turned to Marxist ideology. In 1894, he moved to Tiflis, now Tbilisi, where he became acquainted with Marxist movements. In 1898, he joined the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, RSDLP, and became involved in revolutionary activities. Stalin participated in underground political activities in Georgia and quickly rose in the political arena. In 1901, he was sentenced to exile in Siberia for crimes associated with revolutionary activities in Tiflis. During his exile, he continued his revolutionary activities and met many Marxist leaders. Stalin's youth laid the groundwork for his political policies and leadership. Embracing revolutionary ideas, being part of political movements in the Russian Empire, and his stance against the government were significant factors that shaped his future political career. Joseph Stalin engaged in revolutionary activities as a member of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, RSDLP. He adhered to Marxist ideology, which advocated for the rights of the working class and supported various reforms in the Russian Empire. Stalin was associated with the Bolshevik faction of the RSDLP and was particularly influenced by the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. He began his journalistic and propaganda activities to spread revolutionary ideas. Additionally, he participated in illegal organizing efforts and made significant contributions to the dissemination of Bolshevik ideology. The political repression in the Russian Empire and Stalin's frequent arrests by the police further solidified his radical political views. He actively worked to spread revolutionary ideas, particularly focusing on organizing the working class and increasing political awareness. Stalin's rise accelerated in Russia following the February Revolution of 1917. After the Bolsheviks seized power in the October Revolution, Stalin became one of the trusted figures by Lenin. Following Lenin's death, he played a significant role in the struggle for party leadership and became the first general secretary of the Soviet Union in 1922. This position elevated him to a powerful position, making him one of the most influential political leaders in the Soviet Union. The Stalin era refers to the period during which Joseph Stalin was in power in the Soviet Union, USSR, spanning from the late 1920s until his death in 1953. This era witnessed significant changes in the political, economic, and social structure of the Soviet Union. Here are the main features of the Stalin era. Industrialization and five-year plans. One of the most notable characteristics of the Stalin era was the rapid industrialization of the Soviet economy through the implementation of five-year plans. These plans aimed to increase industrial production, modernize the economy, and make the USSR competitive with other capitalist countries. Forced land reforms and collectivization. A major transformation occurred in agriculture during the Stalin era through forced land reforms and collectivization policies. Peasants' lands were confiscated, and collective farms were established. These policies aimed to control agricultural production and suppress resistance in rural areas, but led to forced migrations and widespread famine. Great Purge. One of the darkest periods of the Stalin era was the Great Purge, which occurred in the late 1930s. During this period, extensive political repression, arrests, torture, and executions were carried out to suppress Stalin's opponents and rivals. Many intellectuals, artists, politicians, and military leaders were arrested or executed. Cultural policies. The Stalin era also witnessed significant changes in the cultural sphere. Art, literature, and other forms of art came under state control. Socialist realism became the official art movement, emphasizing propaganda glorifying Stalin and his regime. World War II and the Cold War. The Stalin era coincided with World War II, during which the Soviet Union played a crucial role in defeating Nazi Germany. After the war, the Cold War began between the USSR and Western allies. Stalin sought to spread communist ideology and expand Soviet influence. The Stalin era is a complex and controversial period in Soviet history. While it saw industrialization and victory over Nazi Germany, it also involved political repression, human rights violations, and economic hardships. After Stalin's death, the Soviet Union undertook a series of reforms to address the legacy of the Stalin era. World War II, a global conflict that began with Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939 and ended with Japan's surrender in 1945, marked one of the largest and most devastating conflicts in world history. Here are the key highlights of this period. Outbreak of the war. 1939 to 1941. The war commenced on September 1, 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland, leading to declarations of war by Britain and France against Germany. The Soviet Union invaded eastern Poland on September 17th. In 1940, Nazi Germany invaded France and continued the war against Britain. Meanwhile, Japan escalated its attacks in the Pacific region. Soviet Union's entry, 1941 and 1941, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. German forces deeply penetrated Soviet territory, but the Soviet Union halted the German advance in the Battle of Moscow. This marked a turning point on the Eastern Front. Entry of the United States, 1941. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, by Japan was a sudden strike against the United States. This attack prompted the U.S. to enter the war and engage in various theaters alongside its allies. Turning points of the war. 1942 to 1943 battles such as the Battle of Midway, Battle of Stalingrad, and Battle of El Alamein were turning points in the war. These battles halted the Axis powers' advance and shifted the momentum in favor of the Allies. Normandy invasion and Germany's surrender. 1944 to 1945. The Normandy invasion in 1944 saw Allied forces landing in Europe to end Nazi occupation. As Soviet forces advanced in Eastern Europe, Allies progressed in Western Europe. The fall of Berlin and Adolf Hitler's suicide led to Germany's surrender in 1945. Pacific Theater and Japan's surrender. 1945 in the Pacific Theater, the U.S. and its allies advanced against Japan. Following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan formally surrendered on September 2, 1945, marking the official end of the war. World War II resulted in millions of lives lost, cities destroyed, and significant changes to the world map. The post-war era ushered in the Cold War period, bringing about substantial shifts in global politics.